Welcome to Orthodox Christian Theology. This is Craig Trulia, and we're just going to do a fun one. Let's choose a Bible for a kid, because I had to just go do this for my son, and I don't think I had a perfect answer. Pano says he can have mine, and I guess that's one solution because he has too many. But we're going to discuss, what we look for in getting a Bible for a kid. And I mean a real Bible, not a children's Bible. My son's read the Beginner's Bible, and he has this Orthodox Bible, has icons in it, and it gives fairly good summaries of the entire scripture from Genesis to Revelation. And but the question still remains, what do we get them when they're ready? I mean, my son, thank God, is completely literate, so he could read a Bible. He knows all the words and stuff, and he could read through it. So I said, hey, when you finish this, you get an adult Bible. And so for the first time, I've had to actually discern, all right, what do I pick? And so simply looking at your own Bible doesn't always work. And I'll get into a little bit of that. My favorite translation, believe it or not, is the NRSV. You can tell this was a well-loved Bible. I mean, just look at the color of those pages. They're literally, stained by my hands. And it's, I love the translation. I find it poetic and memorable. It has they call it the Apocrypha, but slash Deuterocanon, Deuterocana, because it's fallen apart. But it has the Deuterocanon, so it has all the books we need. But it has all these study notes, which wouldn't be useful for a kid. It has the gender inclusive language, which is just not accurate because they're literally adding words that aren't in the Bible. The NRSV makes some very odd choices for what they think the right rendering should be for something instead of a footnotes. They usually take the worst rendering possible and they make that the large type. And in the footnotes is some of the more preferable renderings that they consider they don't want to consider, because it's part of the liberal text critics is that the most embarrassing or ridiculous rendering had to be right, because otherwise how would it survive so long unless it were true, so it's got to be the embarrassing rendering. So again, it's great for the text critic, and I'm, like I said, I love this Bible, but it'd be only a very cynical person that loves reading into nitty-gritty could really get something out of that. It's really not good for a kid's first Bible. And let's just talk something obvious. Look at the size of that type. It's just really not inviting to the child's eyes if they're going to get that sort of Bible. Now, someone says, I was actually going to jokingly recommend that, LOL. Yeah, the NRSV. I don't know if I'd recommend that to most people, honestly, but I love my NRSV. It sadly doesn't get read that much anymore, simply because, not that I wouldn't, it's just maybe I got to put it next to my bedstand or something. I don't know. I've been reading more the Orthodox Study Bible in the morning. So, let's talk here's the obvious normie Orthodox answers. Of course, the Orthodox Study Bible, which, this one's been loved enough where its cover is long gone, and even the letters are. I remember, I think it says somewhere in it, or was it on the actual original cover? It said, may the last lifetime or something, and we could already see even modest amount of reading starts wearing this out, the cross starting to wear out and all that, and you can tell from the pages it's had some love. Even for my kid, he must have opened it someday and put that scribble in it. So there you go. It's even some love for my son. And, it's got some pictures in it, but that's really not the base of an adult Bible, right? It's got some icons on the inside, which I actually felt was a sort of unnecessary addition. It's just to prove, we're really Orthodox. We got icons in our Bible. And but it's not something like what you would get from, who's that press in the Midwest? They make beautiful books. New Rome, right? If New Rome, and forgive me if they have a Bible, please let me know. But New Rome adds these beautiful accents like you would get in ancient manuscripts. They had pictures and stuff because, remember, back then it wasn't like books were mass produced. someone would pay for a book and good money. So it's like an old building. They put a little extra effort in making these things, and it was beautiful. But the Orthodox Study Bible is pretty utilitarian inside, so you really don't get that. So like just adding the icons really doesn't serve that beautification purpose. It doesn't really draw the eye in, where I could see if New Rome made a full Bible, it would draw the reader in, and that'd be very nice. The letter size is pretty good, which is like all things considered for a child that knows how to read. So like the size of the font is pretty good. The study note's probably not helpful for a kid's first Bible, obviously, right? Because a kid's going to be like, well, is that the Bible too? And you have to say, no, that's study notes, and they don't know what study notes are. So it really doesn't serve that purpose. So it's overall, while I use the study Bible, the Orthodox Study Bible is my just regular reading go-to. I honestly, I don't read the study notes. I've read them all once. They're really not all that great. No offense. There's some good guys that have written some of them, so it's not an offense to them, but it's like, it's not at this academic level for the stuff, I'd find too compelling. But it's clearly not the money for a children's first Bible. It's too heavy. I mean, this is way too big and heavy, where, a young child is going to be able to read this easily. Maybe a larger child. My son's reading pretty young, thank God. But it's really not your first go-to. Here's an example which, that you might want to think about is like, well, does a regular old standard Bible, this is an NASB, New American Standard. It really only works if you're a Calvinist, just like they have some pretty eisegetical terms of translation. The letters are too small, so right, it's lighter, it's smaller, but not realistic for a kid's first read. And for my son, I don't want him to get, for his first eyes on the scriptures, NASB is not very poetic or memorable, and it's going to have these kind of these translations which are kind of suspect, which I just don't want to expose my son to right away if I could avoid it. Now, like Elijah says, King James Version or Dewey Rames, and to be honest, Father John Whiteford and I had a conversation about this when I visited him in Texas. And, he's a big King James guy, and I could see it because our prayers, like if you have an English prayer book, our prayers are very much sound like King James. So like I had to really seriously consider, do I start my son with the King James Version, right? Should we start kids with King James versus, something a little more readable? The benefit of King James, it's poetic, it's memorable, it's beautiful. It will down the line help you read Shakespeare and whatnot. I actually edged against it, and Dewey Rames would have all these same drawbacks, by the way, because it's also an archaic language. It's like it would be a little too inaccessible for kids. He could read it, he could pronounce the words, but he's never going to hear these words in normal discourse, and so he's going to begin memorizing things without really having understanding of their meaning, and so, right, it's kind of like the same argument where we said we need English in our liturgy, so we know the liturgy. But ironically, like you, at least if you've gone through the liturgy once in English, whatever it is in another language because it keeps repeating. But a Bible's too thick. It's too many hundreds into the thousands of pages. Where like realistically, you're going to just know what it says because you've read the Bible before. So I've regrettably and ambivalently, because I'm not sure if this is the right judgment call, did not make the King James Version my son's first Bible. And please correct me, but that is something I have decided. Another downside to the King James Version is obviously the Hebrew Masoretic text. You're not going to have translate to English. You're not going to have the Septuagint. So you're going to have some false renderings in the Psalms and in the Torah and stuff like this. And so you have really a Bible that's not closer to what really the correct one is, which is why, though not in all respects for the Septuagint translation Orthodox Study Bible, at least the Orthodox Study Bible bases itself off the Septuagint. Kind of what I like about the NRSV, again, because people, they love panic. I actually like the NRSV. At least the NRSV, actually gets into Septuagint renderings and Vulgate and stuff. And so like, and they oftentimes will pick those before the Masoretic renderings. So to me, that makes it highly preferable because it actually is a more natural read sometimes for that reason. Other than, again, the kind of cringe stuff. Now, someone said, Eastern Orthodox Bible, New Testament, portable New Testament, and I guess that's an option. I don't have that, so I really don't know. So I'll just put that on the screen for someone to think about. He says it's pretty good. Rise says Knox Bible is very good. English Catholic priest, good balance between modern reverential language or a King James Version language, not really an issue. And so again, I like that idea of maybe like, again, a Catholic Bible, you might have Deuterocanon in it and a nice balance. I didn't know about that one. Now, Elijah said New King James Version, but avoid the NIV like the plague. And I agree. NIV is not very poetic. It's now got the gender inclusive language, which is just not biblically accurate. And that's actually where I landed. This is my son's first Bible, first adult Bible. Nice leather outside. It's a New King James Version. Again, well aware of the drawbacks. So I'm not a big fan of the Masoretic text. And most of the Bibles are going to be translated from the Masoretic text. So it's kind of unavoidable. But look at the just the size of the lettering in this, right? So this is much easier for a kid to follow. It's not a bad size. It's a good size. So compare this to a study Bible, right? Much more manageable size-wise. Not a hardcover, but again, that leather bound to make it a little stronger. And so it's manageable like this smaller Bible, but it's, again, much larger words. It's beautiful. So a kid already automatically has like this sort of like, yeah, that's nice. I want it, which I think is important for a child first reading their Bible. Now, I bought it off Amazon. So this is made by Thomas Nelson. All right, so you can just find like a leather-bound Thomas Nelson Bible for New King James Version, and so like this is ultimately what I landed on. Now, sadly, there's some cringe stuff. Like, so it's got the red letters for the sayings of Jesus, which again that implies that like other things from the Bible are somehow less valuable than what Jesus says. And so like I'm very well aware of some of these drawbacks, but it's sort of like it's light on notes, so it's less confusing. For a kid, it's New King James Version, which is the same New Testament as the Orthodox Study Bible. The benefit of that is it uses the word bishop and stuff like that. It doesn't avoid some of these words because they sound, too Roman Catholic, which is what the other translations do. And the reality is, my son's too young for text criticism. He's a little kid, right? This is his first Bible. So I sort of feel, you know what, we'll get into that when he's older. And then we could get to Septuagint stuff. Because to this day, I don't find the Orthodox Study Bible very useful for parsing Septuagint stuff. I actually use an interlinear Septuagint, right? So for me to do text criticism, I'm not going to rely upon my daily reader to do text criticism. I'm going to actually use the computer to do that sort of stuff. First Bible should be devotional. New King James is sufficiently poetic enough. It should be more, but it's poetic enough where it should be memorable, and he could start committing some of the scriptures to memory, God willing. But now I feel bad I didn't know more about that Knox Bible, because again, the drawback of a New King James Version Bible is no Deuterocanon, right? But let's be honest, a kid has a lot of time to get into the scriptures. How long is it going to take a kid to read through their first Bible? Let's be honest. If he finishes this by 10 years old, I'd be very happy. So and then by then, 10-year-olds, they got textbooks in school. You could then, here you go, here's an Orthodox Study Bible, something with a Septuagint translation of the Deuterocanon, obviously, and that could work. Someone says here, the EOB, Eastern Orthodox Bible, is very well put together and aesthetically nice, which again, the aesthetic is very important for kids. So I do like that. Having a child read something like the King James Version out loud or hear the language, good for them, and enforce a proper understanding and reverence for the scriptures. Dewey, King James, Knox, all good. And I really think that's a good point. I might have to take a second look at this Knox thing because I honestly didn't know about it. I got this apologetics channel, but I don't know everything but every translation. That's for sure. You got another supporter of the King James Version. And, I like it. We have yet to see the New Rome Bible, though, I think. And again, New Rome Press, because they do such beautiful work. If that comes out, if it's out, I'm going to go look up while we're talking. But if New Rome Press made a Bible, I would buy it. I would definitely buy it. You'd be crazy not to buy that Bible because it would be so beautiful. But it's sadly that's who I wanted to publish my Job commentary, and I guess they didn't want to do it. Oh well. They got Divine and Sacred Gospel, but it's for reading in churches. In fact, I just saw it. The Romanian church had this one actually. I was at the Romanian church on New Calendar Christmas, and it was It's $195, and it's just the Gospels for church use. But there's a new Eastern Orthodox Bible, New Testament, which it's leather bound. I don't know what it looks like inside. Maybe I'll have to look up Amazon. But it looks like they have something in this New Rome. It's got to be good. So definitely check that out. Now let's see. Someone he mentions here that the King James Version from Thomas Nelson has footnotes for old terms or words, which is good. But again, this is for a kid, right? Most adults don't read footnotes, pathetically, but it's true. So like for a kid's first Bible, I don't know. That's why I edged against it. I'm not saying I'm right. This is like, let's help a kid pick their first Bible. We should have this conversation. It looks like New Rome's working on an edited Lexem Eastern Orthodox Bible combined Bible. So may God help them with that. A good Psalter may be more concerned than a good Bible. A nice reverent rendering the prayers and Psalms, and then something else, a similar language, which is very interesting because I prefer the Psalms as they're rendered in my prayer book more than like when you're actually reading the Bible. Because I guess when they're translated for prayers, they're being mindful of them being chanted in church. And so, yeah, like, when my son starts doing more prayerful prayers and the ones he's starting out with now, that'd probably be a good idea to get like I'd probably be doing an episode on which book of Psalms should, my son use for his prayers. And, that'd be a good thing. Definitely. Let's see. Oh, Father John's on. He says, King James, Cambridge New Paragraph Bible with Apocrypha. And forgive me, Father John, like I said, ambivalent, but I did edge towards the New King James because the understandability. But we could definitely debate that if you want. I mean, right? His kids did just fine with it. So it's definitely a way you could go. I'm not trying to dissuade people from going that way. The Knox Bible is translated from the Vulgate. Again, not as ideal as LXX, but still a Christian text. Good choice in New King James. All right, I feel a little better now. I'm not disappointing everyone. Go Arch uses Thomas Nelson New King James Version. So there you go. Some Eastern Orthodox press should do a revised King James Version corrected to the LXX Dream Bible. And Father John, we've talked about this. There's been some attempt to do it, but it's like they're like these multiple projects that have never come to complete fruition. But yeah, that'd definitely be helpful. Someone did the King James Version Psalms corrected to the LXX, and that's very nice. And that's apparently CTUS. Boston Psalter is probably the best Psalter. I've heard good things about that, especially if you don't want just pepper on your potatoes, you want a Psalter. Boston Psalter is awesome, but I prefer the Holy Trinity Monastery Psalter. I'd switch to the King James Version Revised Psalter if more people in services used it. The Holy Trinity Version is a Catholic study Bible that's pre-Vatican II and honestly not bad for Orthodox Christians. So there we go. Boston Psalter is a Holy Trinity Monastery Psalter. The World English Bible, Deuterocanon, and Apocrypha. I have one. It was on Amazon for cheap. World English Bible is not as poetic, but that's definitely an option. I do like, again, for a kid, there needs to be a poetic touch to it for them to remember it, I think. So again, so your kid has the rest of the canon. And again, like I said, I think we have time to get there. I think it's going to take some time to read the whole Bible. We will start with the New Testament, then start the Old Testament, then go to the New Testament again. And then I think at that point, we'll have to evaluate what age he is to be doing that. You should do a video with Orthodox review for Psalters. I'll have to get a bunch and read through them in order to do that. To be honest, I generally just read a King James version of the Psalter, which sometimes I don't like because like some of the psalms we sing, I prefer those renderings for what we sing in church and chant in church than the somewhat similar King James version. But I mean, we work with what we have. The King James version gives you stuff to explain. Like I guess the kids ask you questions, though I'm not too afraid of questions. Boston only said Father John. And so I will let you guys ask some audience questions. I'm going to, again, of course, always quickly plug the Church of Cambodia. Please, this time of year is the lowest time for donation. So orthodoxchristiantheology.com/donate to support the missionary work in Cambodia. And please pray and consider being a missionary in Cambodia. Link is below. Now, that being said, I will get to your questions, but I'm also going to do a My Two Cents segment in this episode based on stuff that I'm seeing on good old Twitter. So let me give you my 2 cents on apparently Elon Musk, an immigrant, and that Vivek guy, who I don't know if he was born here or not. I presume he was born here, unlike his parents, being that he was running for president. Unless, who knows these days? I guess it's not so important because Ted Cruz ran for president and he wasn't born here. And he shouldn't be president for that reason. But stepped on the third rail by saying, yeah, we want to bring in all these Indian guys to be engineers and stuff. And I'm going to give my 2 cents, which is, we'll get into what my opinion is overall and whether he's right or not. But I want to pan one group in particular: lazy, fat white people. All right. Now, again, being half Jewish, you say you don't have the right to do it. I'd say just like lazy, fat white people want the right to make fun of everyone, you gotta, if the heat's too hot, get out of the kitchen. You gotta let other people make fun of you too. And I should be white looking enough in America, where half Jews are generally considered white, where I have some right to an opinion on this question. And I'm getting tired of these lazy fat white people that pretty much just feel like everything should be handed to them. They shouldn't work for it. These comments are very embarrassing. Again, this is not to support bringing a bunch of people to take engineering jobs. That's not my point. My point is, what we shouldn't be seeing is like response where Vivek is saying, Asian immigrants or their kids aren't watching Saturday cartoons and doing nothing but sports and, watching brain rot on YouTube. They actually go to Kumon and, and do these other academic activities. And of course they become more successful. And the response to this is, that's dehumanizing the kids. That's for the mindless Asian hordes. And the, playing sports is good. Neil Armstrong went to Purdue because MIT's football team sucked. And you suck if you don't feel that way. And not for nothing, this is like the sort of sling crack rock or have a wicked jump shot sort of loserism that's starting to take over white people that really used to not feel this way. It's an inferiority complex, ultimately. If you feel like you got to be validated because you're better at sports than the people that study. Now, when I grew up back in the Stone Age, the idea that the football, the quarterback of the football team was better than, the guy that was valedictorian. No one would say that. Of course, everyone felt that way, right? I grew up in a mostly Italian and Irish and Jewish town, right? People that came from the Bronx. And so, of course, everyone felt that the quarterback was better, but no one said the quiet part loud. At least the valedictorian was publicly accorded more honor. By the way, our valedictorian was actually our top, she was black, and she was also our top basketball player, and she broke all the records before 12th grade because she had a knee injury. So I don't know whatever happened to Adrian Blount, may God bless her. So she doesn't accord to all those stereotypes that people have because there's no affirmative action for her grades. For what it's worth, the valedictorian was Asian, and the third place was an Italian kid. So there you go. So Italians were in the top 3. But that being said, yes, she had all the basketball records, but the most important thing on paper was the fact that she was valedictorian. But apparently, the loser mentality is you're too stupid to ever do that well in a good college, so it's better to be good at sports. Now, again, I'm not against sports. I hope that I can watch the Syracuse football game tonight. I like sports. But society shouldn't at least officially accord sports a higher honor than more productive endeavors. And giving your children some sort of boundaries where, yes, they could play, but, they should have Bible reading every night. They should be learning math and literature and stuff like that. That's not being a Chinese tiger mother. That's being responsible. And not being responsible is being a loser, because that's what my father called people like that growing up, a loser. And my father doesn't have a college degree. He worked on cars. But he understood a loser when he saw it. And that's what's happening these days is we don't understand, we don't recognize loser behavior. We've got a big log in our own eyes. But we look at the speck of all the other losers. Look at this loser, that loser. Usually with the fat, lazy white people who I'm panning, usually it's going to be with the other races or the other gender, like the manosphere. It's always the women that are wrong. But it's not people being lazy. Now, in my own career, I've been told to my face I was the most qualified man for a job, and I did not get it because of my race. I've been told that to my face. So this is not me with a silver spoon in my mouth saying, how dare you complain? I've never, ever been in any sort of adversarial situation like that. I've been picked out more than once in my life because of my race, from being like, I think, 9 or 10 years old at an amusement park, where my brother and I were pretty much discriminated against because we were the only white kids at that amusement park, to much older, just working and the only white dude in a certain neighborhood in the Bronx and, Harlem and stuff like that. I've been discriminated against in the real world, okay? And for my race, for how I look. And I remember a black Christian saying, a lot of white people never ran into someone treat them unfairly because of race. I go, no, I've been told to my face that I'm not getting my job because I'm white. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Sorry about that, right? Because a lot of these things are abstract until you experience them in the real world. So yes, white men have more impediments to being hired, to being educated. They have a lot of things working against them. And I'm not here to justify it. I think those things shouldn't exist. But that doesn't mean those same white men should justify being losers and not trying, right? The loser says, everything's against me. I give up. It's all their fault. Give me welfare. That's a loser mentality. The scriptures say that we should work with our own hands, and if you don't work, you do not eat. So our job isn't to have this mentality as men that it's everyone else's fault that things don't work out the way we want. Now, of course, you're discriminated against. Things won't work out as well as they could have otherwise. But if you're obedient to what God says, if you work and you work with your hands, God will provide. You will have what you need. And if God has put things in your life where you don't get more than that, you should see, well, God superintended this for your salvation. Not crying about it like a baby. And this is something that Bill Maher understood very well the first time Trump won back in 2016. And he said, when you treat white men like a minority, don't be surprised if they come out and vote like a minority. And they laughed at him and said, you're making excuses for all these white people with privilege. But what he said was right, because you discriminate against whites, they start buying into the same loser mentality that other people with low expectations buy into. Right? Sling crack rock, wicked jump shot. And that's why all the Netflix shows are about, some white loser that couldn't make it. So now they're a drug dealer. Now they're slanging dope. Now they got a meth lab. That somehow makes them cool or something. This sort of glorification of criminal culture. And everyone's they don't have a side job. They don't have a second job. They got a side hustle. Everything's a hustle these days because people don't want a legitimate job. They don't want to work with their hands or work hard and earn their living, because the blessing is in working hard. It's in doing obediences. That's why monastics voluntarily opt into obediences, because it's for our salvation. But that's considered somehow secondary to getting a real job and being a real man. So what we're seeing is people aren't being real men anymore. That's why the Zoomers all want to be influencers. All these people, these on the internet, that don't have a real job, they're utter waste of life. They should go get a real job. And if they're so talented at the scriptures or whatever, then go become like a seminary professor, go become a priest, and then do that on the side, right? Just like a college professor actually teaches at a school, and then he writes books and does this other stuff. If you actually have something good to teach someone, then go get a job as a teacher and then do that secondarily. Just like I do this, but my education wasn't education. So now I'm doing something educational, lo and behold. But I don't do this to survive. I have a real job. And you have all these waste of life Zoomers. They don't want to get real jobs because they got a lazy loser mentality. And they got to go out there and have an actual masculine mentality, which is to provide for their family and not take the bread out of other people's mouths so they can put it in their own mouth. Because that's what they're doing. If you don't work, you do not eat. That's what St. Paul said. And that needs to be taken to heart. So that's my 2 cents. Now, we have a few more comments here, hopefully on Bible translations and other stuff. So we'll go through that now. Let's see what we have. So we're going to scroll up. We have go with the King James Version Orthodox Study Bible or something, which we covered earlier in the show. Holy Trinity Monastery Psalter is so lovely. I think that ugly translations of the Bible are kind of classic. There we go. There's a hot take right there. Do you know of any translation of the Sixth Council? I don't think Price has one. No. The Sixth Council is not translated into English. Henry Percival did some sections of the council, and Cambridge University Press, if I remember right, has done the more doctrinal sections of the council. So there's large sections that are translated. But the entirety of the council has not been translated. And honestly, I feel very like if I had more time on my hands, I would maybe undertake doing an entire AI translation of the council. And when it's wonky, being that you've both the Latin and the Greek, you could compare and fix it up. But someone else needs to do that. But if you endeavor on that project, I'll bring promotion to you, whoever you are. So someone should do an AI translation of the Sixth Council from the Manzi. That'd be excellent. We have, I think that if we give kids translations like NASB that are ugly, we will hurt their perception Holy Scripture is ultimately God. Thought? To a degree, yes, but the reality is God's bigger than the translation too. My first Bible I read cover to cover was the most awful translation ever. I forget what it was, like The Message or something similar to that. Very awful translation, and I don't remember any of its renderings, thankfully. And so I don't think we should go with total like 40 IQ edition, dumbed down because we don't think anyone can understand it. But also, like the King James Version is so beyond, I think, a young kid's reading level. I kind of find it hard for them to interact with it intellectually, at least initially. They will learn to read, so it almost becomes more of a didactic exercise for the child than a personal piety. But to be fair, a lot of kids are just mimicking what their parents do with their prayer stuff, like especially before the age of reason, so to say, before 7 years old. So really, them learning to read the Bible will be more educational anyway. They'll know what the stories are. They'll know who the actors are, but they're not going to really, they lack metacognition, let alone like higher cognition where they're going to really fully understand what they're reading anyway. So the argument could be made that King James Version could work. I'm going Christmas caroling. Have a good evening all. God bless you. I don't know who listens to Christmas carols after New Calendar Christmas, but I'd like to know where, because we love singing Christmas carols. Still doing our home. We're still waiting for January 7th. We have, let's see. Sports are fun, but some parents make it like a religion, multiple games a week, traveling in the country all the time. People miss church because of it. Yeah, sports are great, but the reality is if you're actually talented, you don't need to do all this travel league bull crap. That's just the reality. Aaron Rodgers started football when he was in 8th grade, right? Like, and he's not that old. He's about my age. He's not in the Stone Age. Roger Clemens, if I remember, played all different sports and really didn't start pitching to high school. Like, to be a great and have a very long career and to be successful, you don't need to like be doing this travel league stuff. Honestly, that travel league stuff is just low IQ stuff, generally speaking, for people that don't have higher and more goal-oriented expectations for their kids. So you shouldn't impede your kid if they're talented at sports. But like that should always be secondary. That should be used as a carrot and stick thing. Like, oh, we got to do these 4 games a week and do the travel league and, lose all these weekends and whatnot. It'd be better to be like, you don't get to join the team unless your grade points here, you do this much extra homework, et cetera, right? So you make the sports a sort of reward for actually doing hard work and other stuff. My plan is, because my kid's below this, like I have him folding laundry and, he could start with paint, he does some painting when we have that to do and stuff like that. But mostly his main chores, he folds and puts away laundry because, again, he's very young. He can only do so much. Even reaching to the sink's hard because he's too short on a stool and all that. But it's like when he's old enough to be like, I don't know if I want to do all this academic stuff. I'm like, fine, then go get a job. Just do something productive. I'll teach you to work on the car. I'll shovel the snow for the neighbors. We're in central New York. There's plenty of snow and leaves to rake and real work to do. Go do work. Be productive. And that's the thing. Raise productive children, not narcissistic children that do nothing but social media or obsess over sports that they'll never succeed at because they're just not genetically going to have what the naturals have. And that's just reality. Again, we could jump shot or slang and crack rock. That's the loser mentality. It's okay if you got a good jump shot, but that shouldn't be like your meal ticket. You should plan on having a real job because almost no one, makes it in sports. That's like making it in music. Great, your kid plays the violin, but like the Chinese tiger mother thinks, make your kid play the violin 4 hours a night. I mean, that's insane, in my opinion. If you're natural, you'll be good at it. And personally, I'm actually ambivalent with music. You hang out with the smart kids, which is good when you want your kids to have good peer groups. But like to be even mediocre at music requires like 15 to 30 minutes practice a day. What else do we do that takes that much time? That takes away from reading the Bible or doing family devotions and other more important things. So like even your only reason you should pick your kid to learn like a string instrument, in my opinion, is so they hang out with smarter kids. They're less likely to make totally boneheaded decisions because their peer group is less boneheaded. That's the only reason. Otherwise, I think playing a musical instrument generally is pretty boneheaded. And I like playing an instrument. I used to play the cello back in the day. I just don't have perfect pitch, so I don't play it anymore. I can't tune the darn thing. I got up to level 6 Nismo, though. So, yeah, I even think – so it's not just sports. It's music, right? That's the Chinese tiger mother misallocation of intellectual resources. Better off your kid learning how to do brakes on a car or to do – minor carpentry and stuff that will actually serve them in life than playing a musical instrument, which you stop after you're 18. I think playing a musical instrument generally is useless. We have this from Ambient Apathy. I'm going to say it. Exceptions can't be touted as examples of normalcy. Realistically, most Black people are not valedictorians. Well, I wasn't saying it was normal. We were in a mostly white town. Just Adrian Blount was one of those exceptional people who also broke all the basketball records. She like I said, she was definitely not the average valedictorian, but she was valedictorian. But I forget what college she went to. We had a kid that went to Oxford, and it wasn't her. I don't know what she ended up doing. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, I knew her since kindergarten. I got a funny story actually about the valedictorian. So in kindergarten, she was like friends with my twin brother. And I think in the next grade, I think I was in kindergarten with her, and then first grade, she was with my brother, and then second grade, she was with me, and she made a comment one day, it's when we were in elementary school, that when I grow up, I'm going to marry your brother. And I said, you can't do that. And she said, why not? Isn't it? And I said, it's illegal for Blacks to marry whites. Of course, that's not true, but I was in second grade. I had no idea. You just never saw interracial relationships back then. So like I thought it must have been illegal. So there you go. That's my story about Adrian Blount. We have this. But why AI? Why can't we educate people on linguistics and languages? Now, the reality is AI is better at calculations, ultimately. AI is going to be better at translations. AI is going to take a lot of intellectual stuff off the table, which is why what I'm not telling people to do is like, oh, every kid should be a bookworm, because I don't believe that. I think kids should be learning to do plumbing and brake jobs and things where you use your hands, learning how to use a voltmeter, learning how electricity works, which, by the way, is academic, because your wires in your wall aren't going to be outsourced. Your toilet's not going to be outsourced. And they're all good jobs which you work with your hands, which is very good for you spiritually. And so that being said, it's I think parents should be mindful not to gear their kid towards something which AI is going to replace, which, by the way, I think the medical field is going to have that. So I think the medical field is going to be a dead end by the time a lot of these kids grow up. We have this. Worst translation is probably the Jehovah's Witness one. Yeah, it's pretty awful. I'm not going to lie. It's a useless translation almost, but it's better than if you had absolutely nothing at all. So it says, I personally really dislike AI, and educating human is better than any machine. AI in the end of the day is going to prove to be a tool for the people that are adept at using it. And of course, you're going to get the brain rot. There'll be AI-made cartoons and AI books and just, again, brain rot. But AI could do a translation, and then an able translator will then revisit certain words and double-check the AI. So essentially, it's like using a machine to do, the hard, grunt, stupid work, and then doing the fine-tuning yourself. And a lot of people think of AI like it's a Ouija board, that everything that comes out of it is by default going to be just satanic. And I don't have that view. Now, again, we don't have saints because AI is so new. We don't have saints teaching on this. So we don't know the answer to this question yet. But I believe that we will have saints that are doing translations and great work now that will have used AI as a tool. But what they're not going to do is use AI entertainment as a sort of brain rot and then essentially allow demons to conform their minds to opinions. Using AI as a tool to make translations and then checking the original languages to fix things up is just like using a machine to do anything else, I would say. I personally dislike AI for art and music because I think that's really dehumanizing. But then again, before AI music came out, we all had the harmonizers of absolute trash and the same 7 chords for every country song. So the only reason why AI could compete with human art is because human art has become complete garbage the last few years. That's reality. Good music stopped being made 24 years ago. Good secular music. There's no good secular music anymore. There's no good secular films anymore. So if AI starts taking over the arts, it's because humans aren't doing their job. And they're making real junk. And I don't have a very high standard for a lot of art. I like the movie Armageddon, for example. I think they should make a sequel. But it's just an example. If AI is beating humans and stuff, humans are doing a really awful job. We have this, especially important literature, getting AI to do a translation, anything say like a council just feels off. What do you think, Craig? Again, I see AI as a tool. I'd say if all that ever did was AI and then it was published without any input from human beings for a council would be off. I think there should be an official version. I wouldn't want bishops making decisions off an AI translation, but it's useful academically. It's useful for the popular language landscape if used responsibly as a tool. Because there are people that will put into ChatGPT, what did the church fathers say about X? And ChatGPT, again, like a demon and a Ouija board, will just give you fake answers. So you can't, again, if you're lazy and retarded, AI will take advantage of you. If you use it as a tool, I think it could be useful like anything else. Says me, not the Lord. I learned Our Father from our parents. Yes, we just like my son learns the Our Father from church, So yeah, we repeat prayers in church. This guy's passable in music. Chanting should be taught instead of instruments. I agree. I wish there was more actual singing, but the reality is in schools, like chorus is for the dumber kids and the smarter kids play string instruments generally. I made some music with Suno. It was okay. Sometimes it's fire. Sometimes it doesn't work. I'm guessing it's AI. I got no clue. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to call it a day. It's I commend people. Please write in the comment box what Bible you recommend for a kid to start off with. Like I said, I settled upon this New King James Version from Thomas Nelson. Again, looks good, feels good, nice big letters, sufficiently poetic enough translation. Again, drawbacks, no Deuterocanon, Masoretic text in the Old Testament. Some stuff in the New Testament really isn't all that great in the New King James also. So There's drawbacks, but we try our best. I kid ever watches this, which is why I don't talk about more stuff actually, because kids will eventually see everything you do on the internet. I try my best. This is for you, my gift for you, son. So anyway, I'll end the show as I end all of them by quoting Jesus' rock: fight to the death for the truth, and the Lord God will fight for you. God bless you. Have a great day.